Hello, Canucks fans, and welcome back to another episode of Canucks Conversation, which is brought to you by the great folks over at Bet365. Use promo code NATION when you open an account with Bet365 and bet on a huge range of markets. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. I also want to tell you about our super chat, which got utilized yesterday. Even if it was for the reason of Jeff Patterson dunking on me, I want to tell you about our super chat. It's in our YouTube live chat every day. Our super chat charity partner this season is the BC Mental Health Foundation. You want to make sure your question or comment gets on the show? Hit us with a super chat. Proceeds from our super chat will go to the BC Mental Health Foundation, changing the face of mental health and addiction by supporting breakthroughs in care, public understanding, research, and knowledge exchange. My name is David Guidrelli, ready to do some knowledge exchange with my co-host, Harman Dial. Harman, I'm not going to comment on that hoodie, but that is a pretty nice looking athletic hoodie you've got on there.
Yeah, really nice Christmas gift. Every year the Athletic will send just a couple of goodies, and so this year it was this gray hoodie and a sweet water bottle.
I just want to say at Canucks Army, we don't need a reason to give you gifts. Remember, I gave you that Canucks Army hoodie in the middle of the year. Just saying. Just
Very
throwing it
true.
out there.
And I wear that a lot, especially because I prefer black hoodies over gray ones anyway. So don't worry, I'm not gonna the black hoodie isn't gonna be collecting too much dust on the shelf.
That's what we like to hear. Hoodie review time here early on Canucks Conversation. No, we've got a busy show today, folks, so let's get to it. Vancouver Canucks take on the Utah Hockey Club for the first time in Utah tonight. This is going to be a really interesting matchup. Harm, you wrote about this today over The Athletic with your colleague Thomas Drance as well. And, we dive into the numbers and we see that Utah is a very different team than the Arizona Coyotes were last year, even though the bulk of the roster is similar to what Arizona was putting out there last year. This is a young team. This is a fast team who put up really, really solid results at 5-on-5. They skate fast. They defend well. Canucks are going to have a task on their hands tonight at 5-on-5.
Yeah, sometimes when there are these surprise teams, and I don't think Utah's been a huge surprise because I think a lot of people looked at their roster, especially given how aggressive they were in the offseason, and thought, okay, this team could be legitimately competitive. But when you see some of these like younger teams on the rise, the first thing that I often look at as far as assessing whether this team is legitimately improving and has a shot at actually building something sustainable versus, let's say, a team like Detroit, who last year nearly made the playoffs and yet hasn't been able to sustain it, is their underlying profile at 5-on-5. Are they a team that controls play well? Because research has shown that over a large enough sample, if you're a team that does not control 5-on-5 shots, does not control 5-on-5 scoring chances, expected goals, it is very difficult to win long-term in the National Hockey League. Teams like Detroit, previous iterations of the Ottawa Senators, not this season, would often be in this boat where it's like, okay, they've got a kind of interesting record. They've got some young, interesting pieces, but they just get outchanced by such wide margins. And you're thinking, okay, this isn't going to last long. They're going to fall back down to earth. But in Utah's case, they rank top 10 for both controlling 5-on-5 shot attempts and expected goals. So they're a team that most nights is attacking more than they are defending. And that's a really promising sign. And when I look at this roster, I see a legitimately good forward group. They're deep through all four lines. The back end is where they're a little bit vulnerable because of injuries. But when I look at that top six forward group, for example, it's sort of a 1A, 1B system with their lines rather than a distinct first line and second line, because the top line, they of course have Clayton Keller and Nick Schmaltz, and we know how gifted and creative Keller is. But on that second line, that's where Dylan Gunther, they've gotten that next wave. Gunther leads Utah in points. I think he's on pace for around 80. And Logan Cooley, I mean, we know he was drafted really high for a reason. He's so dynamic, so fast, so dangerous off the rush. He's operating at a near point per game pace as well. So fast, young forwards that are going to be a challenge to contend with.
One guy we haven't talked about, Ian Cole. I was workshopping some sort of poll question, but I couldn't get it to work. So we don't have a poll question today. But basically what I was trying to figure out is a way of asking and quantifying how much the Canucks are missing Ian Cole. He obviously signs the 1-year, $3.1 million deal. And let's not do revisionist history here. On July 1st, when we saw Ian Cole get that, I don't think there was anyone that was saying, oh, the Canucks should have matched that. They're going to come to regret this. you obviously have hindsight on your side. Ian Cole's been pretty good. Age 35 season. He's been playing pretty good. He's going to skate in the top 4 for Utah tonight.
Yeah, so with Ian Cole, they definitely miss the composure and poise that he has with the puck. We know he's a slow defenseman, but on the breakout, he was underrated at he's not going to panic and just flip the puck out or try and repeatedly make those predictable plays off the boards that opposing defensemen can just pinch up and seal and steal those pucks away. Cole was really good at getting his head up and making smart decisions with it, seeing if there's a tape-to-tape pass that he can make. That's an element that between him and Zadorov, they haven't had enough of that puck moving in the bottom 4. But again, I'm not looking at Ian Cole at a $3.1 million cap hit and saying, oh boy, the Canucks made a mistake there, because I still look at $3.1 million and that's fair value. But what this team really needed is, if you're going to invest a significant amount of money towards upgrading the blue line, it has to be for a legit top 4 guy. And for as good as Ian Cole has been this season, he's only in the top 4 because Utah is missing Sean Durzi and John Marino on the right side of their blue line. And that's really the weakness with this team, right? They've got Oli Mata, who they acquired from Detroit, currently penciled to play on the offside on the top pair. And they've got Ian Cole on the second pair. And we saw last season when Ian Cole had to step into the top 4 on the second pair for a little bit, he could hang for a while, but in the second half, that's a big reason why his play started to fall off. Was he was playing too much, was fatigued. And so when I'm looking at this matchup against Utah, it again goes back to this blue line, which isn't very experienced and is clearly missing Durzi, who was their number 1 defenseman last year, but also Marino's puck moving chops as well.
Okay. Canucks had an optional morning skate today. PDG and Linus Karlsson got called up yesterday. We touched on it. Not sure if one of them is going to get into the lineup. Not sure how the lineup's going to configure tonight. But those 2 guys were called up. We will see. We will see what ends up happening with the lineup tonight. We don't have a ton of indication. What we do know is that Thatcher Demko is going to make his 3rd straight start. Harman, to me, this just screams Kevin Lankinen needs a little more time coming off that flu. Kevin Lankinen is slated to back up tonight. They send Archer Shelovs back to Abbotsford yesterday. And here's the thing is, if it wasn't going to be Lankinen backing up, then it was going to be Shelovs backing up, and then you have 3 goalies on the road, whatever, right? The way I'm looking at this is just, it makes sense that Demko's getting the start if Lankinen feels he needs another day or whatever, or like he could go, but it'd be better if Demko went, and I think that's what we're looking at here. Because if anyone's complaining about this, you didn't want to see them just go to Shelovs and say, well, Demko needs a day off, we got to go to Archer Shelovs. If Lankinen's not quite ready to start just yet, then I have no problem with Thatcher Demko getting the start tonight.
Yeah, I mean, of course, in an ideal world, it probably would be Lankinen, but either way, it's a back-to-back. It was always going to be split, where if Demko wasn't playing today against Utah, he probably would have played tomorrow against Vegas. And the other piece of context with Karlsson and PDG getting called up is, you got to remember there's the holiday roster freeze from tomorrow till the 27th. The idea behind that is you can't make trades or make regular call-ups, and the logic behind that is to prevent players from having to move around and shift during the holiday season. They want to have a stable environment where they can enjoy some time stress-free with friends and family. So I think that's what they're sort of thinking about, is over the next several days, they're not going to be able to make these additional roster moves. So bringing up Karlsson and PDG gives them extra forward reinforcements, and they're probably banking on Lankinen being healthy enough to play soon. And it's a good sign to me that Shelovs was sent down. That okay, that's a promising sign that Lankinen is really close to being fully healthy.
So Thatcher Demko starts tomorrow. Yes, I will have problems if he starts today. I will have problems if he starts tomorrow as well. There will be big problems, I think, if the Canucks need to turn to Demko for 2 days in a row. Okay, speaking of the holiday roster freeze, Harm, did you see this? Daily Faceoffs. Frank Saravelli goes on Hal from Bruff this morning. Then he goes on Daily Faceoff Live, and he shares that he's hearing the Canucks are quite active in the past couple days as they look for a top 4 defenseman. Frank calls the move a significant one. If it happens, that's what they're working towards. He's not talking about a Vinny Desharnais trade or anything like that. He's talking about a significant move, the big move we've known the Canucks are going to make all year, basically. The top 4 defensemen, they are on that right now, according to Frank. He says keep an eye on them. Obviously, the holiday roster freeze is tomorrow, but if it's not before tomorrow at midnight Eastern, which is when the roster freeze is, man, it does feel like this is going to be a January thing where it's they're not going to wait around for February. They're not going to wait around for March. This is going to be a top four defenseman coming in and getting his feet wet now, and then also going to be around when Filip Hronek returns as well.
Yeah, this is the way Patrick Allvin and Jim Rutherford have always operated. The Elias Lindholm trade was made in January. The Bo Horvat trade a couple of years ago was made in January. So if it's not going to be in the lead up to this roster freeze, I'm fully expecting them to make that prominent move in January. I just believe it's a core Rutherford philosophy that when you know what you're looking for, why wait? Give the player extra time to acclimate and don't be afraid to pay what may on paper look like a steep price if you believe it's fair. And the challenge at this point is just going to be what's the contract status of of this top four defenseman that they're going after, right? Because I'm not sure I want to see them trade a lot for a rental defenseman, for example. If it's a Marcus Pettersson or an Ivan Provorov, I don't love that idea, because after trading for Lindholm and Zadorov and letting them walk for nothing in the summer, that was fine, but you don't want to keep throwing significant assets, draft picks and prospects at players that you can't keep beyond the season. Now, of course, there's always the possibility that you acquire a rental defenseman and you've already got it in your mind that you're going to extend him. But that adds another layer of complication of you got to do your research on how much that player's next contract could cost, whether that player is even going to be open to the idea of resigning, or whether, like, some players are going to want to wait to see where exactly the cap projections land, how significantly it spikes. And, some agents and players may be thinking, well, let's just wait until July 1st because that may be our best opportunity to secure as much money as possible. So it's complicated when it comes to that idea of giving up a lot for a rental. Ideally, it would be a defenseman with term, but man, trying to find a good top four defenseman with term left on their contract, teams don't love moving those types of players. So this is why, like, I understand the Canucks being aggressive. They should be exploring every opportunity possible. But man, this is not going to be an easy move to maneuver to find the perfect fit.
They've made some headway, it sounds like, according to Frank. So, targets. Everybody's asking about targets in the chat. I'll go first, Harm. A guy in Calgary who I watched firsthand move the puck beautifully last night. Rasmus Andersson this year and next at $4.5 million. Is it fair to say that that's the gold standard? Like, if you get Rasmus Andersson, you have got the best defenseman that you could possibly get in a trade. And I mean, maybe that's not fair to say, because who knows? Noah Dobson. Someone in the chat throw out Noah Dobson. I think you'd like Noah Dobson over Rasmus Andersson, but those are slightly different costs, I think, acquisition costs. It's going to cost a lot to get Rasmus Andersson. Again, we don't even know if he's super available right now, but man, Rasmus Andersson to me, and this is the question from 1919 Rolly B in the YouTube chat. What a name. Most reasonable trade target versus dream trade target. Obviously, my dream target is Rasmus Andersson. I think he makes this team better. I think he makes this team better than any defenseman that you could possibly think about trading for, realistically. I like Rasmus Andersson a lot. So most reasonable, I'll leave that to you. Some names that come to mind: Marcus Pettersson, Ivan Provorov. You've brought them up. Travis Sanheim in Philly. Like, we've thrown these names around. Give me a most reasonable trade target, Harm.
Yeah, you do the fun part of just picking the dream target, the pie in the sky that you don't even know if this guy, and then just like throw the hard work of actually finding the best bang for buck option.
Is this your first day co-hosting the show?
Like, this is tough, man. Like, I'm being honest. Looking through CJ's trade board, for example, like let's talk through some of these names, right? So Ivan Provorov, yeah, he skates well. He's got experience playing big minutes. He's having a good year in Columbus, but for a large chunk of the season before the Dante Fabro acquisition, a lot of that was next to Zach Werenski. Provorov was playing the offset, but the point being, like, Provorov wasn't driving that pair. He wasn't the primary puck mover. He was playing with Werenski, who's been one of the best defensemen in the league this season. he was doing a lot of the heavy lifting, and Provorov was more in a support role. So Provorov, yeah, he's a good player, would legitimately upgrade their top four, would legitimately help on the second pair. But the question is whether he'll move the needle enough. Like, put it this way, can you go deep in the playoffs with a Provorov Myers second pair, for example? I don't know. I'm not saying the answer is no,
But you
but
can go further with Rasmus Anderson.
yeah, I mean, it's not even close as far as how much better I like Anderson as a stylistic fit for this roster compared to Provorov. Not to mention the rumored asking price for Provorov at this stage has been a first-round pick. Now,
Yeah.
Columbus may not ultimately get that, but that's what they're looking for, especially if the Canucks are trying to make a move early. And that reporting, of course, for those that don't know, was from Pierre LeBrun at The Athletic around a month ago. So he's a rental, right?
He's a
So
rental.
like that's where it's easy to find guys on paper and say, I like I like, if contracts didn't matter, if trade acquisition cost didn't matter, it's like you could look at Provorov and be like, yeah, he would help this blue line, but it's the logistics of actually making it work. We've talked about Alexander Carrier out in Nashville. If he was a rental, I'd be all over Alexander Carrier. He's a right shot. He isn't a flashy player by any means, but he's mobile. He moves the puck. He has experience playing shutdown minutes against top competition. It's just a matter of, are they going to like the term left on his contract, especially given that he's a sub 6 foot defenseman, and we know how much Rick Tocchet and Adam Foote covet size on the blue line. So I think immediately, if you're thinking most reasonable one, maybe it's Carrier. But yeah, I don't love a lot of the options that are realistically out there. I mean, we can talk about Bowen Byram. I love Bowen Byram as a player, but again, what's it going to cost? It's you're not getting Bowen Byram for a first round pick, a B-level prospect, and another draft pick.
Is it also fair to say that Bowen Byram's past head injuries at such a young age kind of worry you a little bit? Because I think for me personally, it does, especially if it's a guy you're trading that much for, and we know how much it's going to cost to get Bowen Byram. It's going to be a lot. I don't know. Like, I would rather have Rasmus Anderson for 2 years at 4.5 than Bowen Byram. Is that crazy to say?
Uh, it's tough
They're
to say
going to
without
cost you
knowing what the
regardless.
costs are, but the head injuries are a legitimate concern.
Yeah,
for sure. I mean, we've seen in the past players whose careers have kind of been derailed by concussions, and Bowen Byram's been through it. So yeah, that is absolutely part of the concern. Not to mention that he's an RFA at the end of the season with arbitration rights. He's going to be looking to cash in on a big contract. So it isn't just, we love this player, it's how much value does Byram bring to the table relative to the cost of his next contract, which is going to be significant. I'm going to try and pull up to see if there's some type of projection that maybe a site like AFP Analytics has. So maybe stall for a couple seconds here, but
you're
that's
speaking my
another
language,
thing
man.
you have to keep in mind.
Yeah, there's so much that goes into every single one of these players. And there's people in the chat right now throwing out different names. Someone's dream target was Cale Makar, and Logan Van Dyke replied and said Cale Makar can't defend. So we've got some Cale Makar detractors in the chat right now. Someone's dream target was Cale Makar, and Logan Van Dyke, who I haven't seen in a while. He was a regular listener to the show. Don't know where he's been. No shade, Logan. But he's saying no, Cale Makar can't defend. Cale Makar is not the dream target for the Canucks.
Come on, like kill the.
You don't have to
like,
react
guys,
to that. I was
yeah,
just
I know.
spelling for you. Are you good?
Yeah, no, this is I'm good now. So AFP Analytics has Byram's next contract projected at around $6.5 million per AAV, assuming a $92 million cap hit. So that sounds kind of conservative to me. Might be pushing closer to the $7 million range, because 92 million sounds like the bare minimum as far as the actual cap increase that we'll see for next season. And the other interesting thing about Byram is he's one of these intriguing players where you watch him play, and he's such an elegant skater. He's got strong offensive chops. His micro stats, as far as like zone exit numbers, are great, and yet his overall underlying metrics haven't been good at all in Buffalo. Now, it's difficult because he's playing on a bad team, and a lot of times that is just related to environment. And when a guy goes to a better system, better team, better coaching, then that same player becomes a lot more effective. Tons of examples, but you can think of Hampus Lindholm, for example, in Anaheim. Went from having bad underlying numbers there to goes to Boston. All of a sudden, his two-way numbers start popping again. But it is worth noting that for since Byram's gotten to Buffalo, it's sort of like not bad, but mediocre two-way results there. So that's something that you'd have to dive deeper into and like watch a ton of tape, because again, you'd have to invest a lot as far as the pieces that you're giving up to get him, and the cost of his next contract too. Not to mention that a futures oriented package isn't going to get it done for Byram. The Sabres already have tons of picks and prospects. Yep. They're looking for win now help.
They got that win now help when they traded for Bowen Byram. Like, don't forget, it was Casey Middlestat for Bowen Byram. So they're going to be looking for something similar like that. They're not looking for these futures, like you're saying.
And I also asked Matt Fairburn a couple of weeks ago, this idea of, hey, is Byram available? What would the Sabres be looking for? And he reiterated the win now component, but he also mentioned that the piece they're looking for is either a top four right-handed defenseman, which the Canucks clearly don't have a good one to give up there, or a top six forward. So that's where, what top six forward are the Canucks giving up in that type of conversation, in that type of conversation.
So Nils Hoglander's not going to get it done, is what I'm hearing. Okay. I'm going to give you two wingers, Harm. I'm going to give you two wingers. I want to talk about Buffalo, 11 straight losses. I want to give you two wingers, and we're going to get to anyone else in a second. I guess this is my anyone else. I want to give you two winger names that I think people should keep an eye on. This isn't me reporting anything. These are two winger options because we've seen reports from Drager on Sekeres and Price. We saw Pierre LeBrun on TSN all this week saying that the words that they're hearing from around the league when it comes to what the Canucks are trying to acquire is that, yes, there's the top four defenseman. We all knew that, but it's a winger. I think we touched on this yesterday. I have two wingers for you. Two names to just throw out there. Drew O'Connor, he's a Penguin, so that's why he's on my list. Okay, Drew O'Connor. And on all seriousness, I think the team really likes Drew O'Connor. Jordan Greenway is another guy that they've had interest in the past. We've heard that they've had conversations about Jordan Greenway with the Sabres. Sabres have to be looking to make some sort of move. Greenway hasn't lit the world on fire this year. Hasn't necessarily been brutal or anything like that, but the Sabres need to make some sort of trade. And this is why it's so funny, is because people out there that are throwing out the Nils Hoglander for this great player that's probably going to cost a first round pick. More realistically, it's like Jordan Greenway plus something else for Nils Hoglander. That's more in the neighborhood of what Nils Hoglander's value is right now. Do I think Buffalo could use Nils Hoglander and like Nils Hoglander? I think, yeah. I think a guy that's, he can't go anywhere. That's kind of what Buffalo needs, is guys that are cost controlled and figure it out for a few years. He can't go anywhere. Nils Hoglander for Buffalo. And I look at Jordan Greenway as a potential part. Again, not a 1-for-1 swap, but as a part of a deal to bring Jordan Greenway to Vancouver. He's a pending UFA at the end of this year, $3 million cap hit.
Yeah, I could see that appealing to the Canucks. I mean, Greenway's 6'6". He is good along the walls, good defensively, helps on the PK.
And been interested in the past. That's the thing that stands out to me and why I name him is and the reason I thought of this, I'll be honest, I was doing our Canucks year in review. We're doing our top news stories of the year, and one of them was that Jordan Greenway, and the Canucks were interested in Jordan Greenway. So that's why his name was on my mind, and why I remembered that, just last season, this calendar year, the Canucks were calling the Sabres about Jordan Greenway, and they liked Jordan Greenway.
Yeah, I'm not the biggest Greenway fan. I think he's fine as a bottom six player, but that's all he is, right? And I mean, maybe with Hoglander, you're at a point where the management group just realizes that it's not going to fit between the player and the coach, and it's more about freeing up that cap space or beyond next season. And okay, in the meantime, you're getting a guy who is better able to fit in your bottom six right now. But if that would be the result of the overall Hoglander situation, I would look at that as as a situation that they mismanaged asset wise with Hoglander. I mean, in the offseason, I was talking about, hey, he's scored these 24 goals, all of them at even strength. This is the time and also keep in mind, he was healthy scratch at times in the playoffs. So it was sort of like a crossroads where, okay, his value is at a high because of the breakout regular season that he had, but clearly there are still question marks around, okay, is this player going to be a fit with Rick Tocchet long term?
Benched in the playoffs, healthy scratch in the playoffs.
And what did I say in the offseason? Like, the time to make a decision was last offseason of, if you aren't fully sold on Hoglander, sell high while he has value, rather than playing this out closer to the regular season, especially because of the shooting percentage bender that he benefited from last season. So it's either you sell high on him or extend him proactively. Now, they extended him proactively, which I was on board for, but clearly they're at the point where Rick Tocchet just doesn't trust him, and that relationship, I don't have much confidence that that's going to rebound, even though I like Hoglander as a player and believe that with the fresh start, he will figure it out as a top line player. That I would look at that and say, well, I can understand why management would make that type of potential swap. I would ultimately look at that as they didn't maximize the asset value of Hoglander, considering the year that he had last season and the opportunity to sell high in the offseason. If they truly knew that there were question marks between Hoglander and Tocchet.
Okay, let's talk about Buffalo. Let's get to anyone else, which is brought to you by our friends over at Greta, a great spot for all games home and away. We were there for the first viewing party of the season, so don't miss out on the rest of them. But even if we're not there, you certainly should be. Just minutes from the arena, come by before and after the game or whatever event you're downtown for with arcade games, weekly drink specials, and the recently updated street food menu. Greta Bar YVR is the place to be. 50 West Cordova Street is the address. Let the games begin. Now, I don't want to go off too much of a tangent here. I haven't tried everything on the street food menu, but something I tried were those mac fries that they have. Those are delicious. Like I love me a good Big Mac, but the mac fries, that was phenomenal. Those were phenomenal at Greta on the street food menu. So those are recommended by me. What did you get that night? You ordered off the street food menu too, didn't you?
It was some type of bowl. It was really good.
Some type of bowl. It was really good. Now you know what to order when you go to Greta. Check out Greta, the sponsor of anyone else. Okay, Harm. We need to watch a replay of yesterday's show real quick. Jacob, pull it up. Yesterday's show, I correctly predicted basically exactly what happened as the Buffalo Sabres fall by a final score of 6-1 to the Montreal Canadiens. Pull it up, Jacob. Montreal Canadiens plus 110 on the money line. The home team, the Montreal Canadiens, because I'll take you into the Sabres room. Okay. You go to you're in the Sabres room. Oh man, ownership's on the trip. They never pay attention to anything. They're too busy with their precious Buffalo Bulls. Let's put a stinker on the ice. They'll see how bad things are, and then we'll get real change. What do you think it accomplishes if Terry Pegula waddles onto the team flight and says, yeah, I'm here to see what's going on, and then the team rallies around that and puts out a great performance? What does he think? Oh, perfect. There's nothing wrong. Okay, back to the Bills. No, if you're a Sabres player, you're going to have to stink it up tonight. Like I don't think it's this motivation that people might think it is, that the owner's on the flight. Like, you're already in Buffalo. You can't get traded anywhere worse. Harm, your thoughts on that perfect read from me on the vibes going into that game?
Well done. Credit to you. Man, the Sabres are such a disaster. And yeah, I don't even know what to say. They got scored on 15 seconds in.
Okay. Now, I don't need to take any more victory laps. That was enough playing the replay of yesterday's show. Let's talk about the Sabres legitimately here. 11 straight losses. The thing that we didn't mention on yesterday's show was that Pegula went in, the owner, of course, went into the locker room and said, don't expect a big trade. we're going to we think that the answers are in this room. Okay, that was the report that came out about what Pagula said to the team. And then they go do that. The answers aren't in the room, Harm. Like, I think that's a very, very clear indication that the answers aren't in the room. Because if they were, the answers would have showed up last night. And in all seriousness, obviously I'm joking around when I say, oh yeah, the players weren't trying and they purposely stunk it up. That's me exaggerating. And while it may appear that way, these are NHL players. They're trying. They are trying. And that's really the realistic thing here. I like to joke around and everything, but like if a Sabres player heard that, they would obviously scoff at it and say, like, obviously we're trying. They are trying right now. They are trying to get themselves out of it. That's the most concerning thing, I think, is that was them getting the rallying speech and all that from the owner saying, yeah, the answers are in this room. The answers aren't in that room, Harm.
I legitimately don't even know what to say or how the Sabres should approach this next. To be totally honest with you, there are some situations that you look at and you just like don't understand. It's not that the Sabres are completely hopeless in the sense that, like, big picture, okay, they still have some pieces, right? It could be a lot worse. You could be like the San Jose Sharks when, like, at the tail end of the rebuild where, okay, you've got zero prospects, you've got zero young players to build around. You're stuck with a bunch of anchor contracts. There are worse positions to be in than the Sabres, but it really feels like culturally they just are in this site or are stuck in this cycle of they've been rebuilding for too long. They haven't been able to turn the corner, and losing is just a habit there. Losing is the norm there. And I think culturally, you got to figure out a way to break that cycle, which is exceptionally difficult because they've tried making coaching changes. They've made GM changes. How do you change the culture? And ultimately, that's why I think a lot of GMs are scared to blow it up and rebuild sometimes, even though it sometimes is the better choice for some franchises, is because they look at teams like Buffalo and say, well, we don't want to end up losing for 4 or 5 seasons. Now we've got a losing culture, and even though we've got a good core in place, that young core can't figure out how to take the next step and actually win games.
This one from 1919 Rolly B in the chat. Who's been more of a disappointment, Buffalo or Nashville? And Harman, I'll throw in a third team, the New York Rangers, who get shut out 2-0 by the Nashville Predators last night. I'm not bringing that up to say, well, Nashville's turning it around. I'm bringing it up to illustrate that there are a few dire situations around the league right now, and the Rangers are certainly one of them. I'll answer the question. Given expectations, I'm going to say that actually, I don't know if I can definitively say it, but I would say that the Rangers are probably the biggest disappointment out of those 3 teams. The only thing that gives me pause on that is that the Rangers are still at around 500. The only thing is they were expected to be like a President's Trophy team, whereas Buffalo looked like a team ready to take the next step. Okay, you didn't take the next step, back to where we were before. Nashville, you spend all the money. What were we really expecting from the Predators this year? Certainly we thought they'd be a playoff team. Certainly we thought they'd be contending for the top of the West, but we weren't talking about Nashville as, oh, they're going to be the best team in the league and now they're going to miss the playoffs. That's the conversation around the Rangers right now. So I would say it's between Nashville and the Rangers. I give the slight edge to the Rangers right now.
I would lean towards Nashville just because they're 32nd in the NHL. It's not just
that's true.
They're out of a playoff spot. They are worse than San Jose, Anaheim, Chicago, Montreal. They are dead last in the NHL after signing Stamkos, Marchessault, and Shea to long-term contracts that they're now handcuffed to. Like, that's a massive disappointment. Now, big picture, if you're talking about which fan base has the most reason to be upset, it's Buffalo, because it isn't just about this season. It's 11 or not 11 straight years. I think it's more than that, 13 or 14 years of not making the playoffs. They're all massive disappointments in their own way. Buffalo's is a little bit different because for Buffalo, it's more the buildup of, okay, it's been over a decade of this rather than they were expected to be good this season, and they haven't been good because realistically, heading into this year, I looked at the Sabres and thought, they could be competitive. I didn't look at them as a playoff team. I did not expect them to make the playoffs.
Exactly.
The Rangers, yeah, I expected them to be one of the top teams in the East, especially after Carolina lost all these pieces. And you're thinking, okay, the Rangers should own the Metro. They're completely spiraling. Like that's a rough situation for them to be in. And clearly, it's more than just the on ice results and on ice product as far as the dysfunction and turmoil in this franchise. Whether it's Chris Drury or the coaching staff, there are much deeper issues culturally with New York right now.
And I think the big question with all three of these situations is, where do they go from here? Do you want to try and diagnose all three situations, or should we see how they play out a bit and offer solutions as we go along throughout the year?
Nashville has to retool. Like, it has to be that in between. You can't rebuild because you've got $25 million per season committed to Stamkos, Marchessault, Shea, O'Reilly, and you're just not going to be able to move those contracts. So a full tear it down, rebuild, and we're going to tank now, that's just not going to be feasible. Plus, then the other side of the extreme, you're not going to double down on this win now strategy either. This is where for Nashville, you have to lean on the fact that, okay, they have a decent prospect pool. It's consistently ranked above average by, the Athletic, for example. They've also got 3 first-round picks this year, 2 second-round picks next year. They're going to have to try and thread the needle there as far as integrating some of these younger players. And I will say this, though. You may have to look at one of Yossi or Forsberg, sit down with them in the offseason and say, are you open to the idea of possibly moving? Because Yossi's 34. I don't think the Predators can turn this around quickly enough, even if they're retooling to, say, contend for the Cup with Roman Yossi still there. So even though it's not a full tear it down rebuild, I think they've got to look at moving at least one of their cornerstone pieces that would actually garner and net them some legitimate value, and then commit to a retool and sort of a youth movement without fully tearing it down.
Someone in the chat said some of these situations, especially Buffalo, reminiscent of the Jim Benning era of Canucks hockey. It's worse than that. Is that fair to say? It's worse than that. It would basically be like the twilight of the Jim Benning era, where it looked like they might be able to put something together, where it was so clear that their young players were going to be stars, but then they continue to fall flat on their face. There was no 11-game losing streak during the Jim Benning era. Yeah, it got dark right before they drafted Elias Pettersson. Thank God it did. That was their only year where they actually tanked, and it got them Elias Pettersson in the draft lottery. Go on.
We were literally 10 years old when they last made the playoffs. That's not an exaggeration. We were literally 10 years old in elementary school.
Yeah, Rajcraft in the chat said Jim Benning made the playoffs. Don't you dare disrespect Jim Benning by comparing him to what's going on in Buffalo right now. Yeah. Not great. Okay, Harm. Did you have anything else that you wanted to get to before we close out anyone else? I have a few little tidbits that I wanted to get to.
No, go ahead.
Okay. The Senators, they're 7-2-1 in their last 10 games, 4-game win streak after beating the Seattle Kraken on Tuesday night. Keep an eye on Linus Ullmark. He's kind of someone that's turned his game around, and the wins have kind of correlated for the Senators. He's got 6 straight wins, 2 shutouts in his last 3 starts. Canucks face him in Travis Green's return as a head coach to Rogers Arena. Face the Senators on Saturday. Of course, we will preview that game on Friday when we're back at the Wall Center, but definitely worth keeping an eye on the Senators. They're starting to get hot. Probably not going to look like the same team that the Canucks took down last month. So home game, Senators, Canucks, keep an eye on the Senators. They're getting hot right now, and Linus Ullmark is getting hot, and it doesn't surprise me that the Senators themselves are also getting hot. Anything you wanted to say about the The Ottawa Senators, Harm.
Yeah, the Senators are interesting. I'm still trying to wrap my head around them because earlier we had this conversation around when teams that are on the cusp of maybe turning a corner, and we're having this conversation of, okay, is this the year that they legitimately push for the playoffs and actually get in? You're trying to look under the hood at what's real, what's not. The Senators have really good underlying numbers as far as how they control play, and I think in the first quarter of the season, Allmark was the most disappointing player, and it was the same continued issues between the pipes. Now he's figured it out. That said, they have to be careful of not running him into the ground because his workload lately is really starting to catch up, and secondly, this is still a group that can be fragile, and when adversity strikes, they do shoot themselves in the foot. And until they do it for a really long stretch of time, there's still going to be that question in the back of any Senators fan's mind of, is this real? Are they gonna actually figure it out this time, or are they just, when it looks promising, find a way to shoot themselves in the foot again?
Yearly tradition in Ottawa. Okay, final thing from me, Harm. Sorry, do you hear that?
Let's go Calgary Flames hockey team! Let's go Calgary Flames hockey team!
Do you feel it, Harm? Do you feel it? The sea of red? The heat picking up on you in your precious Western Conference standings? Are you feeling it? Yeah, they lost last night, but they lost in overtime. They get a point, and I've got a few stats to tell you about, Harm. Don't look now, but Nazi Caddy, as we call him in Calgary, Nazem Kadri, 4 goals in 4 games. He's now on pace for 31 goals, and your precious 50-point threshold that you kept saying, oh, no one's going to break 50 points. He's on pace for 54 points. Huberdeau as well is on pace for over 50 points. So as I predicted, getting hot at the right time. The Flames are heating up. They take the Bruins to overtime. Bit of a collapse to get to overtime. They probably should have won that game, but it goes to overtime. They pick up a point. Certainly better than what the Canucks did against the Boston Bruins, as I say on Canucks Conversation. But had to mention my Flames. 2 players on pace for 50-plus points. You don't have that over me anymore.
Wow, yeah, congrats. You sound really confident. If you really want to put your money where your mouth is,
I already did.
I propose we double down.
An additional pirate pack? No,
yeah.
I'm not doing that. No,
because you're scared.
No, you're scared. No, you're scared.
Well, I'm the one that actually wants to wager even more.
You're scared, is what I'll say.
Yeah, okay.
I just need to figure out how to make the mental gymnastics work to explain that.
3, 4, and 3 in their last 10, coming at me with, oh, they're heating up. Heating up for the lottery, baby.
Kadri scoring goals. Okay, we got players on pace for 50-plus points. We're getting hot. They're coming. We're coming, is what I should say. We're coming. See you, Red. Here we go. Anthony Mantha missed some time too, but he was on pace for 50 points. Also wanted to point that out.
He's not returning this season.
Is he not?
I'm pretty sure he tore his ACL. Let me double check this.
Oh, and someone also brought this up as well. Yes, we know that Jordan Greenway is hurt right now because yeah, he's out of the season. Mantha's out for the season.
Yeah.
But Greenway, I wanted to say quickly on Greenway, he had a procedure in mid-November, but he's probably going to be back for the Sabres next game. It wasn't a long-term thing for Jordan Greenway. And I'm not trying to change the subject. Yeah, I didn't realize Mantha was out for the whole year.
I feel like I know more about your favorite team than you do.
All right. I just needed to make sure I pointed out Nazem Kadri's heating up. We're coming at you. Okay. Let's go to the Bet365 bet of the day, which is brought to you by, you guessed it, Bet365. We don't ever pick the Canucks, so we won't change that tonight. We are going to take, who do I like? See, this is a problem. I'm putting my reputation on the line with these picks. The Panthers came back and they beat the Edmonton Oilers by a final score of 6-5. Stuart Skinner doesn't play for the Minnesota Wild, so I like the underdog Minnesota Wild to beat the Florida Panthers and give them another loss. Plus 125. They are the biggest underdogs I can find Yeah, biggest underdogs I can find, other than Anaheim against Winnipeg, but we're not doing that. We're taking the Minnesota Wild at home. They just lost Philip Gustafson, which isn't great, but we're taking the Minnesota Wild plus 125 to beat the Florida Panthers. That is Minnesota Wild plus 125 money line as our bet of the day, brought to you by Bet365, a proud partner of Canucks Conversation. Open an account with Bet365 to now bet on a huge range of markets. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Be sure to use code NATION when you sign up for an account. Must be 19 plus play. If you choose to play, please play responsibly. Okay, I think we have enough there. There was a lot in the chat today. We appreciate it, folks. We'll get to more tomorrow as well. I think we covered a lot of ground today with the Rangers, the Sabres, and the Predators as well. Final thing from me, Family Feud. We're a few votes shy, if I'm correct on that, Jacob. How many more do we need?
Like 20-ish, somewhere in or around. I haven't checked since last night. So.
And we want to keep it to listeners of the show. So please go vote in the Family Feud survey. It is available in the YouTube description, and the podcast description. Wherever you're getting this show, you can fill out the Family Feud survey. Tomorrow's show, we're going to play Family Feud, putting the record back on the line. We're 6-6 again, I believe. So we need to get a win.
I think we're 6-7.
Are we?
Yeah. You guys were 6-6, and then you lost by 2 last week to drop to 6-7.
Back at 500, just like the Rangers. That's what we're going for. We're playing to go back to 500. So get your responses into the survey, folks, and we will be back tomorrow to break down tonight's game and keep talking about it all.
And
the next game tonight.
Quads, I think we should probably mention there's going to be around Christmas and New Year's a few days that we're taking off. We'll probably be putting Family Feud on hold until the new year. So this will be the last one for 2024. So make sure you guys get that survey filled out, as we want to see if these guys can get back to 500 before January.
And no more of these. Name a month with 30 days in it. Don't give me those. I don't like those questions. I remember though. I know the knuckle trick now. But we will wrap it up there. For my co-host Harman Dialer and technical producer Jacob Bazar, my name is Dave Woodrelli. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Canucks Conversation. Canucks Conversation is live Monday through Friday, every weekday at 2 p.m. over on the Canucks Army YouTube channel. Make sure you like, subscribe, and interact in the YouTube live chat every day with us, folks.